Hi, it's Sue Ann with Gravy Days again. I want to ask you a question. Maybe you can relate to this. Um, I lost my best friend of over 40 years about 4 years ago, right now. And it seems like I do pretty well most of the time. That I've not necessarily moved on, but that I'm able to keep a pretty happy countenance and do a pretty good job during my days. But every now and then, something happens. And I think this is the nature of grief. I woke up one morning last week, all of a sudden, really missing her. Um, I know that there are many who have suffered grief in different forms out there, and this is something that you could probably relate to. But the interesting thing is that while we called each other best friends, we had other friends that we did things with, and we always had a good time and enjoyed our times with other friends. But when we were together, we were not afraid. We had big adventures together and we enjoyed those times. And she was a friend who was in some ways like none I'd ever had before. She saw me through the births of my children and through various moves, separation from my husband, and an eventual divorce. She always had health problems ongoing in her life of one nature or another, and some were worse than others. She had a couple of different kinds of cancers, but she was able to come through them. And there were a lot of quirky accidents in her life. She had once she was hit in the head with a golf ball at a golf tournament. I mean, who does that happen to? Well, it happened to her, and all sorts of weird and interesting things that happened to her in her life. Well, I because she always got through these things, I just whenever she'd say, "Well, this is happening in my life," um, like when she would talk about some of the things that were happening, and she would say, "This is what the doctor says." I tried to be really upbeat about it and not be a downer at all because she always beat it before, always. But clearly, I wasn't fooling myself or anyone else. I mean, it's only a matter of time before these things happen and they get worse, and one of us leaves the other one. And she told me that once. She looked at me and said, one day, one of us is going to die. And I said, yeah, I know. I don't like thinking about that, but I know. She would always get through these things, always. Well, she passed away almost 4 years ago on my birthday, of all days. And I I have real mixed, difficult feelings about the whole thing around how she passed away. I read about her. I knew she was in hospice, but I read about her passing on Facebook. Someone had posted it there the morning of my birthday. I it just felt like a big mess, a big jumbled mess that she and I didn't get to talk about, and um, and it still feels that way to some degree. So anyway, I think she was the only person that I've ever had in my life that I could say anything to, no matter how difficult or weird or odd or surprising. And she never turned me away. It would always be, well, that's something. We were able to get through everything together. So when she wasn't there and I couldn't talk to her anymore about some of these things that were happening in my life, I had to figure out other avenues. And uh, that's not always easy to do either. And if you've ever lost anyone, you know that that's true. I After she passed away, I wrote something about her on social media and posted it. And I felt like I'd lost her, that I didn't know where she was, clearly. But a friend of mine said, talk to her. She's listening. So during one particularly difficult period when I was having issues in my life that I didn't know who else to talk to about it, I did. I talked out loud to her. And I said what I needed to say. And I said, I don't know what to do. And I heard her voice in my head. And it's the same thing she'd said to me, I don't know how many times before, but it was in her voice, in her words. And I really used that, viewed that as a gift, as a tender mercy, that she was indeed listening, and that maybe all I had to hear from her were those words in that moment and help me get through it. And it did. I was, one day, not long after she passed away, I made a pan of brownies. They're my go to comfort food. And so I made these brownies and I ate them and ate them and ate them until I felt sick, of course. And then I threw them in the garbage, what was left of them in the garbage. But then hours later, when I started to feel that way again, I pulled whatever I could out of the garbage. Have you ever done that? I felt so bad about this that I talked to my daughter about it. I said, this is out of control. I don't know what's happening here. And she set me straight. My daughter did. She said, Mom, you literally just lost your best friend. Give yourself some grace. If you have to eat that whole pan of brownies, do it. But don't come down hard on yourself. This is serious. I found out, and maybe you have too, that grief is tricky. That you can think that you're having a good day, that you're getting through things just fine. And then you're walking down the aisle in the drugstore, and suddenly in front of the toothpaste, you break into tears because of the song that's playing over the PA. It reminds you of something. It reminds you of your mother. It reminds you of your loved one that passed away. Or you hear a certain song on the radio that does that very same thing to you. And one thing that happened to me was not long after my best friend passed, I was walking down the street, just walking down the street, going to my office, and there was someone coming toward me that looked just like her. And for a moment, I dared to breathe and think that maybe it really was her. And of course it wasn't. But it's been a while. It's been a minute. It's been almost 4 years, and I'm still feeling some anxiety around her leaving me. Not her fault. She did all she could to stay alive. I know she did. But I would sure love to hear from you how you handle grief. What you do when it settles on your soul or in your heart. What you do about it. I would love to have a conversation about this with other people who have experienced the same thing or who are going through this. Thanks for listening. Let's reach out to each other. I'll see you next time.